All right, guys, welcome back to this section of the Unbreakable Body program and course. In this video, we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth of what the power patterns are. If you're curious about how we got here, go back to the other video in the actual Unbreakable Body course, and then you're going to be able to understand how to utilize power patterns so that this, and what I'll mention here, is that this is the link between just that daily Unbreakable Body programming, that daily Unbreakable Body prescription, and actually linking yourself up for success in the gym or in training. So these are the exercises that I want you to think about that are the fundamentals to make you more effective and get more out of the challenges in the actual gym, in the weightlifting, or even on the trail. So let's dive into it. You notice that there's a bit of a pyramid because this is a hierarchy. If the base of the pyramid is not present in your physical being, if you're not moving in this way, what's going to happen is that you're just going to crumble. It's like you don't have that foundation first. So this is the first thing that I want you to consider. So the first thing that you have to work on is bracing and breathing. And I have a lot of breathing exercises in the Unbreakable Mind, but breath is a powerful exercise for you to actually just completely inform your body, okay, I'm about to work, and completely inform your mind, okay, I need to focus. So breathing is this amazing mechanism that is simultaneously conscious and subconscious. So even if we are working on the subconscious mind, if we're going to go into a deep meditation, we can actually do breathing techniques to just prepare ourselves to be in what's called coherence, so that our mind and our body and our emotions and everything can be set up for success. So breathing is powerful. The actual breathing exercises, the ones that I teach, are going to be in the Unbreakable Mind, but they still have a huge effect on the body. Now, bracing is the physical act of being able to take your core, you can see my core here, take your core and actually just create a brace around it. So if you have, for instance, low back pain or even a shoulder issue or anything, that just tells me that you are not bracing well. I worked with some pitchers, some baseball pitchers, which is the thrower, right? And what they were experiencing was typically elbow issues, and I always tested their core on the other side, and if they had an elbow issue, I always saw that their core on their front side, if they were throwing, it would be their left side. So if they're right-handed, their core on their left side was not functioning well. And the way I would just test their muscles. And so that's how you would know. So if you're not bracing, what's going to happen is that there's going to be some tearing, some tension somewhere else, and then all of a sudden, that's when you start to break apart. Again, we talked about entropy and enthalpy, breakdown and recovery. These are huge and super important principles, concepts to understand. Okay, so you must brace and breathe first. On the top of that is hinging and squatting. So hinging is like hinging at the hips, spine straight, being able to hinge over. Squatting, obviously, is being able to physically get your hips down towards your heels in a squat pattern. So these are actually movements that we did learn through primal movement. However, when we're actually developing power, we need to be able to first learn how to brace and breathe, to develop those. Then we learn hinging and squatting. And if you want to, do hinging, you can do deadlifts, you can do trap bar deadlift. There's so many different ways to hinge, tons of different ways to squat, front squat, back squat, overhead squat, tons of different ways to squat as well. So on top of that, after we hinge and we squat, is lifting and carrying. Now a lot of people ask the question, it's like, well, if I want to develop power, I'm just lifting and carrying. How is lifting anything different than hinging and squatting? Hinging and squatting at the end of the day is really just learning the movement pattern of that. Actually lifting and carrying now, lifting is physically lifting weight up off the earth or lifting weight up over your head. Carrying is the ability to physically carry weight. So for instance, if I have a weight here and I'm carrying that and I want to have a strong shoulder, I'm going to literally walk by holding this in what's called a low waiter walk. I'm just going to hold that, or I'm going to hold a weight, by my side, and that's called a suitcase carry or a farmer walk or a yoke walk. And so I'm going to literally carry weight. such an underrated mechanism, because what it does is it increases bone density, which then ultimately stimulates the bone marrow to produce more blood vessels, or blood cells rather, which then gives you more blood in the system, which is a good thing. We need that, right? So after we go through lifting and carrying, that's when we get into pushing and pulling, and our next one. And pushing and pulling, you can imagine, is just like that classic, just up overhead, but there is a specific way in which you can do it that is most effective. So pushing and pulling, depending on there's tons of different angles. You can go up from overhead, you can go horizontal, you can even pull from the ground, which looks like a clean for people who are in Olympic lifting and they understand it. So pushing and pulling, the biggest fallacy, or I wouldn't call it fallacy, but the biggest issue I see in the gym is that people will just jump these. They won't even look at this, and they'll go straight to pushing and pulling, thinking that's how they're going to get big, strong muscles, because they're going after muscles, not function. That's the problem with going after aesthetics instead of actually going after function. If you want to function and be a human and be an optimized human, start with bracing and breathing, then hinging and squatting, then lifting and carrying, then pushing and pulling. So going in this direction. Now, in order for us to develop power, if you consider power as the ability to move through range of motion at a fast pace, then we have to actually get into translation of force, or what I call rotary force. So rotary force is the ability to rotate, literally translate everything that you just did through, if, for instance, a baseball. All sport revolves around this. All sport revolves around rotational power, rotational force. So you think about throwing a baseball, or even playing hockey, even running. If you think about like running isn't just like one direction. There's actually rotation happening through the shoulders, through the hips. So running is not just a one planar sport like sprinting 100 yards, because you're rotating yourself. You're literally rotating and creating translational force. Same thing with boxing, hockey, with baseball, with golf. All sport and all human activity to create power then goes through rotational force. So anytime I'm programming myself, or for you, what I'm going to be working on, what I'm going to be focusing on is this basic framework. I always think about, am I hitting these throughout the course of the week? Am I hitting bracing and breathing, hinging and squatting, lifting, carrying, pushing and pulling, and rotational force? So the simple acts of like rotational cable press, for instance, I'm looking at rotational force. Yoke walk, waiter walk, you're going to hear that a lot. Waiter walk, which is like holding a kettlebell upside down to create that shoulder stability. Lifting and carrying, picking up weight off the ground. I always want to simply work from this basic framework, and if I'm in that framework, then you at home will get stronger, more stable, more powerful. You're going to notice that you don't have those random pains anymore. The biggest thing I see when people are getting injured from working out, in the case of just running, right, or CrossFit, or even weightlifting, people are going to get injured when when they don't have a full encompassment of all of these, and they don't have the base down, and they don't have the second layer and third layer, fourth layer, fifth layer. So if you don't have those layers down, what's going to naturally happen is that you're going to crumble. You don't have the infrastructure, so your body breaks down, and so now you're not going to be able to function. So again, you notice that these are just like, this looks like working out, that's really what it is, but each one of these can be optimized. So there is in the Unbreakable Body course simple tutorials on how to optimize each one of them. And then when you get into the actual challenges, the actual workouts, the actual stress that you're taking on to push against, that's when you're gonna be able to get the most out of them. So each one of them will have an optimization video that you can watch, and you can understand how to move well. But ultimately, this is how you're going to program yourself moving forward from here on out. Because if you just follow this basic framework, just add these into your workouts. Literally just look at your week. Am I hitting each one of these? Do they fall into any one of these? And if they do, good. That's when you can start to see progress. And so as you're programming, again, Just think about these power patterns, and then you're going to be a much more effective human. So this, again, once we have functioning, we talked about functioning, which is joint positions, it's posture, it's movement patterns, that primal movement patterns, and we can start to incorporate that power movement pattern. You can actually optimize for those and then use those to actually get you more adaptation out of the challenges in the gym. So do this stuff. You'd be amazed at how well it works. Just follow that basic formula, that basic fundamental. Now you see kind of how the programming is set up, because I want to think about how I'm going to get the best result in the least amount of time. It's using this. That is the way to go. All right, guys, enjoy that. Enjoy the Unbreakable Body course. I know you're going to get a ton out of it. You're going to see so much progress that you haven't seen in years and years and years. And be sure to tell friends, because you're going to get a ton out of it. I want as many people in the world to just get this information. And I promise you, you're going to see just a massive improvement in your overall functioning, your adaptation, your ability to adapt, and ultimately your evolution. And you will be unbreakable. Enjoy the course. All right, guys, we'll see you.